Hey there, guys. Welcome to another Legally on America video. I'm, of course, Paul Glasgow here. Remember about a decade ago, Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 disappeared. And remember that we never really got any final word on that? Well, there's a reason for that. And here recently, the search for MH370 headline, long missing Malaysia Airlines flight suspended after just weeks in the Indian Ocean. For some reason, they're seeking to go again after 10 or 11 years to locate either parts of or the flight itself. The latest search for Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 has been suspended by maritime exploration firm Ocean Infinity as it is, quote, not the season. Malaysia's transport minister has said more than a decade after the plane went missing and less than 6 weeks after the new hunt for the airline began. They, meaning Ocean Infinity, have stopped the operation for the time being. They will resume the search at the end of this year, Transport Ministry Anthony Loke said in a voice recording sent to AFP on Thursday by his aide.
Friday marks 10 years since Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 mysteriously disappeared en route to Beijing. Families gathered this week in Kuala Lumpur to remember their loved ones. The Malaysian transport minister told the families the country may charter another search effort. Passengers and crew have been presumed dead since January 2015. And although debris was discovered, the governments of Australia, Malaysia, and China were not able to locate the plane. They ended their formal searches in 2017. A search by an American company a year later also yielded no conclusive answers.
So, guys, I have the pleasure of having Mr. Ashton Forbes on with me today. He's done a lot of research on MH370. Ashton, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul, for having me.
Man, I'm excited about this. When the plane went missing, I know that a lot of us had tons of questions, and it's like anything else. You always wait. Okay, when are they going to start finding things? When are they going to find the black box? You know, all the normal things whenever there's some kind of an airliner that goes missing or an airplane that goes missing or something. And it's like the story fizzled out without a big amount of fanfare. You know, I think sometimes whenever we hear MH370, we're like, that sounds familiar. What was that again? And then we remember it. You've done a ton of research on how, why, everything, how the MH370 disappeared. I want to go into a lot of that detail today. And as I mentioned to you off camera a minute ago, I'm a very simple person. My mind doesn't process things probably as quickly as yours does. Watching enough of your videos, I know you're a very intelligent person. So I'm gonna lay this out to make it easier for me. I'm gonna ask you the who's, the what's, the whys, and the hows, and I'll ask you in that particular order. First of all, if you don't mind, just to give us some credibility on your background for my viewers who don't know you, tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do, what your profession is, and what your strengths are in those professions.
Yeah, so I work in actually healthcare IT. I have for 20 years. So I'm a data analyst, and I help doctors and nurses basically set up their workflows with computer systems. So I try to take people's workflows and optimize them and basically improve our healthcare system, which needs a lot of improvement in this country. I got interested in this just kind of on a whim from investigating two videos that reemerged on social media in August of 2023. They're extremely difficult for people to believe, but eventually one day people will begin to understand that they're real. And one of the aspects of the videos is that there's a Boeing 777-200 in the videos, and there's coordinates in them, and they indicate that they are Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. So for the last year and a half, ever since that happened, maybe a little bit longer now, I've been investigating either MH370 or the science and technology on display in the videos or the potential cover-up that happened to this plane. So I'm here to just answer any questions about the plane, because it's not really about me and my credentials. It's more about the evidence and what the evidence shows that happened to this aircraft.
No, I agree. And I obviously, I'm not trying to paint you into a corner, because smart people can do things other than the one job they have. I want to make sure that we understand who you are, what you do, and all that kind of stuff. And again, I've watched enough of your videos where it's very perplexing. I want to start with the what happened first. Let's don't talk about the who's, the hows, or anything like that. In your opinion and the research that you've done, and you've done extensive research. In fact, you sent me a ton of assets that we're going to utilize during this video also, that shows me how much research you've done. What do you believe happened to this airliner?
Yeah. In a nutshell, I believe that there was a fire that was either accidental or potentially intentionally started on this plane by the United States military to divert the plane when the plane went dark, that there are 20 witnesses that corroborate a fire, or that the plane potentially starting on fire, loud noises, plane flying low, consistent with a fire event. The flight path of the plane when it turns around goes to Penang, also indicative of a fire event. The fact that they didn't send up jets to track the plane would indicate that they had some sort of communication with the plane. They knew it was an emergency event. And then at some point, this plane rendezvous with the United States Navy in the Nicobar Islands, and they use some sort of advanced technology that the world's not aware of on the plane to zap it, for a lack of a better term. Now, I've been saying that they teleported the plane. It could also just be annihilation. I mean, the plane's gone. No one's really been able to find it. And the official story of what happened to this plane, though, is that they don't know. Just the plane just vanished. That's the official story. And it's important to point this out because the reason why who's responsible is important is that it implies responsibility, like accountability, like liability. So if, for example, there was something wrong with the aircraft, Boeing would be responsible, right? If it turns out that it was something related to the procedures, Malaysian Airlines is responsible. If it were to turn out that the pilot was somehow responsible, it would absolve everybody else of liability. The reason why I say this is that some people have this idea, this is just a conspiracy theory like any others, that the Malaysian government is hiding this to protect the pilot or to save face or something like that. But it doesn't make any sense because the government, Malaysian Airlines, Boeing, everybody would want the pilot to be responsible, because if they were responsible, none of them would therefore be guilty or responsible.
Right.
So I just wanted to address this because the main prevailing narrative that's out there is that the pilot did this, went on an 8-hour joyride into the South Indian Ocean where we never found anything. And it's kind of sick because everybody has said that this is wrong and people won't give up on this because they just can't accept that there's an unnatural explanation for what happened on this plane. And they want it to be something normal so badly that they're willing to vilify a completely innocent guy. Last thing I'll say on this is that when I say everybody said he didn't do it, I mean everybody, like his family, his coworkers, the officials. They said it's not something they think the pilot could have pulled off. The FBI also investigated this simulator. They said there's nothing suspicious about it. Like everything you hear that connects that says the pilot did it is all just completely phony and made up.
Bring me back to, I just want to understand this. When you talk about the fire, and I've heard it's probably you and some other folks have talked about the lithium batteries that were stored in this airplane, and in a really odd place too. Sounds like the location of the lithium batteries being stored was not probably the ideal place within the aircraft if you were in fact going to transport that many lithium batteries all on the same flight. If there's a fire, when you mentioned divert the plane because there's a fire, was it over the ocean, you assume, whenever it caught fire? And if so, why divert it if it's already just over the ocean?
Yeah. So the big question, I can't answer all the questions about why the United States military chose to do what they did with the operation, where they sent the people, why they chose to use this exotic technology. My guess on that particular question, which I have gotten before, is that that location in the South China Sea is too close to China, too close to their surveillance assets. They need the plane to be further away from China before they do what they were planning to do with it, because it's the kind of thing where why divert a plane? Why take a plane? Well, you're trying to hide it from people. If you do it right in front of them, they're going to see it. And also, and this is my opinion, but I think a lot of people agree, when the intelligence communities are doing an operation, it's like a movie playing out. Mm-hmm. You have like these steps, and it's all planned out that everything's going to happen at a specific point. And it's like the movies. And that's what this kind of whole, when you kind of look at it in totality, the scenario, what happens, and it'll start to make sense when people like look at the videos compared to the events that I'm saying. It seems hard to believe, but it is a scenario just straight out of the movie. So with respect to the fire event, this is what I'll say. There are several experts out there that already speculated that the fire was the cause of the plane, like before it was even revealed that there were lithium ion batteries on the plane. So people were like already on this because of the flight path, because like nothing else really made sense. It just seemed like it should be an emergency event, but also because a bunch of other planes had burnt up in between like 2010 and 2014. And they were related to lithium ion battery fires, so much so that they banned lithium ion batteries in the cargo of passenger planes. You don't fly on planes now with lithium ion batteries in the cargo if you're a passenger because they're too dangerous. And they've made it better. But I actually spoke to one of the two main experts that you can find the old news articles about. One was Dr. Edel, and the other was a guy named Billy Vincent, who was a former security director at the FAA. I got in touch with him, and he said he knew it was a fire before they even revealed the batteries, just because he had seen other cases just like this. And one of them was UPS Flight 6, where the pilot was not even able to get their hood on in time because just one or two breaths of the smoke from the lithium ion battery fire was so toxic that it knocked him out. The co-pilot, you'd say, well, why didn't they try to land the plane? And this is just like MH370. Why did they not try to land the plane if it was a fire? They couldn't see out of the windshield because the smoke was occluding the windshield. So the co-pilot couldn't safely land the plane either. Tried to land, and what happened? Crashed the plane, and the pilot and the co-pilot died in that situation. So you could imagine a scenario in MH370 where the plane's turning around, going to Penang, the closest airport to land in a Boeing 777, which should be like such a huge piece of evidence. But of course, it's ignored by everybody who wants to say that the pilot did it. They literally say, I'm not making this up, they say this, the pilot flew to the closest airport because they wanted to say goodbye to their hometown. What? It's such a stupid, in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. when you're on a suicidal pilot route. None of that makes any sense. No, they were trying to land there, and they couldn't land there, maybe because they couldn't see out of the windshield because they had no power. And why were the batteries stacked up in the forward cargo bay? You guys can check the ATSB report just like we did. The 2 pallets of these batteries that when you look at the pictures of how they were stacked up and put together that day, it's like, looks like the most dangerous thing you could possibly imagine. You stack them in the forward cargo bay, one sec, right next to the electronics bay. And if those batteries ignite, they're going to destroy the electronics bay and make the plane go dark.
So where is that? Is that under, on the bottom side of the airplane? Is that where the forward cargo bay is?
So you have the forward and you have the aft cargo bays. And then the forward cargo bay in the front of the plane is right next to the electronics bay in this case. So if it was some type of, let's say, espionage mission on this plane, and let's just like, I know it's hard to imagine that people really pull off covert operations, but, in this case, you look at it, the only people who could pull off something like making a plane disappear, this isn't like random people from the Middle East with box cutters. It's not this kind of operation. To make a plane disappear, it's got to be a state-sponsored operation. I just want to point that out. So, my argument here is that they were trying to divert the plane, and Mike McKay saw this plane on fire in the South China Sea at the exact time the plane goes dark, and he lost his job and got discredited. The witnesses along the coast that heard loud noises at the same time, they got ignored. The fishermen who are off the coast of Thailand and Malaysia 10 minutes later that see the plane flying low, they get ignored. And then this plane, so it goes to Penang and doesn't land. So some people will say, why didn't they land? Why? I gave you guys one explanation. If you look at what you're supposed to do as a pilot in this scenario, the next thing would actually be try to land on your belly. But honestly, it's just getting to be a judgment call at this point because you're doomed pretty much no matter what. You land on your belly with a plane that's that size, full of fuel. You can imagine what's going to happen. The next thing is land in the ocean. So speculatively, what really happened is there was communication with the plane. They've classified the communications with the plane. That's why weirdly, the last communication they claim that we got is good night, Malaysian Airlines 370, like a minute before the plane goes dark. Now, there's definitely more communication. They couldn't land. Then somebody comes over the intercom and says, go to this rendezvous point. You're going to ditch the plane in the ocean. We're going to have assets there, and we're going to pull out as many people as we can out of the ocean. I imagine some type of call like that occurred. And the reason why I say that is that then in the Nicobar Islands, roughly 15 minutes after the last military Malaysian radar ping, we're now west of Malaysia, completely different location we were before. We have two videos that are clearly at first glance military videos. At least they portray military videos. One has a drone visible in it, and the other is some kind of weird over-the-head video, which we thought initially was a satellite video, but it actually turns out it's this secret whammy wide area motion imagery capability that the military has. 2 videos with coordinates in them indicating that location, both in perfect synchronization from completely different angles. Okay, we have 2 videos. And that location is close enough to a real woman who saw the plane, Catherine T. Around the same time, the plane would have been at those coordinates. And she saw the plane glowing orange, flying low with smoke coming out of the back of it with no navigation lights. Okay. There's also, at the same time, China Times only report that there was an intercepted communication between the Navy and MH370. Of the pilot of MH370 saying the plane was disintegrating and attempting an emergency landing or emergency ditching. Okay. Now, if this is a court case, I just said I've got 2 military videos in perfect synchronization. There's no discrepancies on a single frame. There's nothing anywhere that anyone has ever forensically looked at those and said, oh, here's some obvious flaw that is in this video. We also have a real witness who is in the location within 100 miles of the coordinates, who saw the plane within 5 or 10 minutes, presumably, of when we see the plane at those coordinates. That corroborates what we see in the video with smoke coming out of the back of the plane and the plane flying low and circling around, potentially descending. And then we also have this China Times report that the Western media never picked up on, that also corroborates the plane on fire and landing. If this was a court case, that would be all I would need for, proof. 3 different, completely independent sources of information. And that's probably the strongest evidence there is that's out there, that those videos are real. That's the real story of what happened to the plane. And if you haven't seen the videos or you just watched them and you're like, what's going on? Well, they zapped that plane from that location somewhere else or no longer exists on this earth. And that's why we never found it. And that's why they covered up the fire. They covered it up because they did some crazy operation with some exotic technology that they can't tell the world about.
So let me corral us back here, because that's a lot of information. So going back to the what happened, because the how it happened is next. So with the what happened, what you're saying is when it took off, even when it was taking off, there was already a plan to ignite a fire in order to disappear the plane later. Is that what you're saying?
My opinion is that that's the most likely. I would say there's 2 predominant theories. One is that the fire was accidental, and then the Navy, U.S. military stepping in potentially to rescue the plane, a doomed plane that is no chance it's going to be able to land safely. It's going to explode. So maybe there's a VIP on board in that scenario. The other scenario would be, and we haven't talked about the who yet, but the other scenario would be that this is an espionage event or a counter-espionage event. Maybe China's trying to steal the plane or the people on the plane, and maybe the United States knew about it, and this whole thing was planned the entire time. And this is some high-level spy game stuff that's happening above the public's level of perception.
Don't confuse me. We'll get to the why.
Yep. So basically, that's how I look at it from those. In my mind, the odds that that's aliens that came out of nowhere or ghosts or spirits or whatever it is that came out of nowhere is 0, basically 0. Everything about those videos screams operation and screams the people who are recording that know what's going down. If like you don't know what's about to happen, like you're randomly recording that plane like that, and those orbs start spinning around the plane, that is not how you're going to be controlling the camera.
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not for you, but for the people out there, because there are a lot of people out there that think that like this is aliens and this is proof of aliens, or that the aliens have come down to save the plane and send it to the Xenu dimension or whatever. Like, people got to reel that back. The thing that's beautiful about these videos, not beautiful, but like, I don't know, revealing about these videos is that they directly implicate the United States government in this operation and in having this crazy, weird, maybe alien, maybe whatever technology. I don't know, Tesla tech, whatever you want to call it.
So let's do this. Let's move on to the how, because I think the how,
Sure.
I tried to put these questions in order so that they can answer each other and bring us to the next one. All right. So if we have, and just to be clear, I'm a curious person. I don't have an opinion on this event in any kind of way. I have no idea what happened. That's why I have you on here, because I'm intrigued by your approach on this and the amount of research that you've done. I mean, it's clear you've done a lot of work on this, but I don't have an opinion. I don't know or think or care if it's well, I guess I care. If it's aliens, US military, Chinese military. I'm just curious what happened, because I don't think the authorities have number one, given us enough answers. Number two, they don't seem willing to give us those answers. And anytime somebody's not willing to answer questions, it always makes me wonder why you're not willing to answer those questions. So that's why we're here. Okay, guys, that's part one of this series. Ashton and I actually spoke for about an hour and 30 or an hour and 40 minutes. And I didn't want to put that entire video out and bore you guys, although I don't find this that boring. It seems pretty intriguing to me. So this is part one of that series. I'm going to release 3 videos in a row. And on that third day, I'll probably release the entire video. If you guys want to have the entire hour and 35 minutes together, that's fine. And it may end up being 4 videos. I don't know. But the whole point is I want to make this to where you guys can watch it and digest it without having to commit an entire evening to watch it. So that's why I did this. I broke it up into pieces. Tomorrow, I will have part 2 of that segment with Ashton. And curious what you guys think. I mean, let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think Ashton's crazy? Do you think I'm crazy? Either way, Ashton has provided a lot of information, and it's not just from him. You can go online and get a lot of this information as well. But it certainly makes you wonder when the federal government, when other world governments will not answer questions, will not even provide answers. Not only, it's not that they're providing bad information, they're providing no information. And it's from people who would know the answer to those questions, and they're simply not answering those questions. So anytime somebody who should have the answer won't answer, it always makes me wonder, why won't you answer? So look for part 2 tomorrow. Once again, I want to thank Ashton for coming on. And yeah, at least 2, maybe 3 more videos to this. I think you're going to be intrigued. The rest of the information is pretty compelling. Again, I'm not taking a side on this. All I know is when I see things that don't have a reasonable answer to it, either it's a very good con job or there has to be some truth to it. And again, not taking a side, a lot of good information right here, a lot of interesting information. And one final thing to leave you with. If the federal government had the type of technology that we're looking at and that we're talking about in this video, would they tell us about it?